With that, we are ready to move forward in our program and get started with the theme address. First address in the morning, and then with us, we have Vinod Dham with us. I think all of us as engineers would have known and heard about Vinod Dham, but I will still take the pleasure to read out a brief bio of him and then get him on the stage in front of all of you. Vinod, while you get on the stage with your camera and mute on, Vinod, popularly acclaimed worldwide as the father of Pentium for leading the Intel iconic microprocessor brand from its inception to the worldwide success. Vinod has over 40 plus years of experience in developing semiconductor products and technologies. He successfully led and managed the Intel 386 compaction, Intel 486, and the Pentium processor families, three product families that helped Intel become the largest semiconductor industry at that time. Vinod was named as one of the top 25 executives in the computer industry in the 90s and the top 100 most influential Asian American at the turn of the century. Recently, Vinod was highlighted among the Indian Americans who have helped shape the America at their storied Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. Vinod has a bachelor's degree in E&E from Delhi College of Engineering and a master's degree in solid state science from the University of Cincinnati, USA. Vinod, welcome and over to you.
Thank you, Naveen. Are you able to see me on the video?
I'll just check.
Yeah. Are you able to
Vinod,
see me?
yes, we can see you. I'll get your slides up, but you can get started.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Naveen. First and foremost, I would like to thank IESA and especially Dr. Satya Gupta for giving me the privilege of presenting to this august audience. I'm going to focus my talk today on why it is the right time for India to have its own domestic semiconductor chip fab, the heart of all the electronic devices. Although I've always been in favor of a domestic fab capable of building proprietary chips for India's defense and military needs, I have been for last couple of decades opposed to the idea of building an advanced fab in India. My opposition in the past had stemmed primarily from my belief that India could ill afford to get into a highly capital intensive business that required obsoleting an expensive fab which cost billions of dollars every 3 to 5 years just to stay competitive. However, now that Moore's Law's 50 years of relentless march is coming to a halt, I believe India can now afford to jump into this race and remain competitive in a sustainable manner. Go to slide one, please. Uh, Semiconductor chips are the heart of everything around us in this increasingly digitized world, including cell phones, computers, cars, cloud computing, watches, medical equipment, drones, smart homes, agriculture, military equipment. They are an essential ingredient of the world economy today. As 50 years of the relentless march led by Moore's Law is coming to a halt, a level playing field for new entrants like India is opening up to invest in advanced silicon technologies without needing to constantly obsolete them. Recent international moves resulting from COVID and geopolitics have precipitated an urgent need for India to become a crucial player in this important game. India has a large pool of chip design and embedded software talent ready to take off. The modernization of semiconductor chips and ubiquity of internet has enabled a large local market and world market to develop internet of things, which is connecting everything to everything else. Next slide, please. So job one for us is to jumpstart this Internet of Things chip and product startups by leveraging existing chip design talent locked up in multinational corporations. Chip design is more capital intensive than software development and takes longer time to return the investment. But all software, in some form or the other, resides in hardware. Very few domestic venture capitalists today have adequate capital pool for investing in chip and product startups in India. I believe the government will need to kickstart this nascent effort of building these startups by supplying the critical seed capital required for these startups to come to life. I recommend an amount of $500 million per year should be injected by investing side by side with the other venture capitalists in equal funding at seed and Series A stage in product and chip design startups. I further suggest that we add another $500 million per year allocation for investment as limited partner. This is government acting as a limited partner into domestic venture capitalists dedicated to investing into chip, product, and intellectual property based startups. So these are very important things that we are trying to isolate and actually help a nascent chip design industry as opposed to software industry, which is really very well established in India and taken hold for a long time thanks to the great IT success we had. But in chip design, even though there are quite a few startups, they are not very well funded. And even though we have tremendous amount of chip design know-how, it's all occupied and locked up in multinational companies. For India to create its own ecosystem of creativity in chip design, it needs to be able to pull out these chip designers out of these MNCs, attract them with sufficient capital in order for them to design and create innovative ideas for India and world at large. Let's go to the next slide, please. So job second for us is to complete something that we've already started, which is electronics manufacturing ecosystem. So there are elements of this ecosystem that exist in India and especially in Bangalore, Karnataka. Whenever I visit, I see that. But the entire ecosystem doesn't exist in its completeness. And one thing we have learned in this COVID scenario in the last 6 months is it's very important for uh, countries to have a critical mass of their own supply chain systems domestically available so they are not dependent on outsiders at the time of very critical need. In recent years, the assembly, test, mark, and package business has again been reinvigorated by new needs for this separate chips, such as radio frequency, sensors, processors, memories, all of them to be packaged together into a small package, which we call Internet of Things. And therefore, we need new types of packaging in order to do that. This is not my times packaging that I was used to working it when I was at Intel. We are talking about new types of packaging, such as chiplets. Uh, some of these things have been invented and introduced to mitigate some of the slowdown that is taking place as the Moore's law is coming to an end. And all of this new activity should make this ATMP business, which has been there for decades, very attractive again, especially in India. I suggest the government should provide soft incentives to fabless multinationals who already exist. Who's there? You heard Deputy Chief Minister's presentation, Honorable Deputy Chief Minister. He gave us many names of many companies from all over the world that are right in his backyard in Karnataka, we can encourage these companies, incentivize them to at least package ATMP activity in domestic ATMP units by giving them some incentives indirectly and directly. This will help increase our entire ATM capability and ecosystem in India. Next slide, please. I think it's time for us in India to make big, bold commitments. And I would talk about two commitments. One that India has already made, and it's the semiconductor fab in Chandigarh, Punjab. We need to upgrade that fab to a 65 nanometer fab so that we can really meet some of the growing needs of the defense. If you read about any of the foreign military journals, which I am very fond of here sitting in California, there's a lot of access to a lot of information. The future wars are all going to be digital wars. A lot of those wars will take place in very automated sense, and technology will play a very, very heavy role in winning those wars. It's very imperative that we in India recognize that and create a domestic capability to be able to control the basic heart of what we will go into weaponry and defense equipment and produce it in-house. And SCL should be upgraded, in my opinion, to a more advanced technology, not as advanced. Today's most advanced technology in the world is 7 nanometer in production. And I'm talking about many, many generations before that, because I believe for military purposes, you don't necessarily need the fastest and the cheapest cost product. What you need is a product that's very highly reliable, a military grade product, even if it costs some extra, and even if it's larger somewhat in size, it should be very reliable and robust. And that's really the key. And that's why I'm recommending prior generation fab for this type of activity. But more importantly, to enter into this era of Internet of Things and startups, supporting startups, and becoming a player, a world-class player in semiconductor technology, we also need to set up a new 14 nanometer fab. And of course, this is an expensive fab. And I recommend that something like this be done actually by a private public partnership where the government of India and a private company from India or a set of private companies from India join hands together to set together this fab to build locally and support local startups for building IoT chips and smart processors. So this is the two-prong activity which I think needs to be done. I'm sure the first prong is just building upon what we have and is more incremental and can be done relatively sooner and faster. The second prong is significantly more important as well and will take more time, but I think we need to engage private companies in India, which have done very well in many of the other fields. There's no reason that we can be a world-class country known for IT and a world-class country actually known for pharma. It's one of our pharma companies in Pune that is being much talked about here in USA as a hope for the medicine that are coming out for COVID. And there's no reason why we can't also be a world-class country for manufacturing a 40 nanometer and then beyond that as time comes type of products in-house. Please go to the next slide. So I know there's been a mention of this thesis that India's self-reliant message is echoing throughout this year. And keeping that message in mind, I'm going to make a bold recommendation that in order to guarantee the success of this crucial effort, that our government should launch a independent and fully autonomous National Electronics Commission, something along the lines of ISRO, CDAC, or CDOT, which most of you are quite familiar with. And the key to this success would be that this Commission should be directly reporting to Honorable Prime Minister's office so that we can cut through a lot of delays in decision making and make faster decisions to bring about this change in a very timely manner. I believe that securing India's future will require us to have this advanced chip fabrication and design capability in-house, and we must act now. The timing is very, very important. Jai Hind. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinod. That was very clear instruction and direction for all of us about what we need to do if we have to get continuing on this accelerated path for the Atmanirbhar Bharat. Vinod, we have one question that at least I want to bring it out to you before we get to the next session. And then you talked about the manufacturing ecosystem, the all other things. What do you think about, in general, the open source in terms of EDA, IP, cores, and all as part of this? I mean, an example being RISC core versus the traditional x86 and ARM core. Do you see that playing a role in driving this mission that you just explained?
Not necessarily. I think x86 uh, is a very important architecture that's playing a very important role still um, in computing, only the computing area of personal computers and laptops and servers. It's not necessarily playing any role or any significant role in the cell phones at all, where the ARM chips are playing a more important role, if you will. As we go forward in building IoT, I see no reason why we cannot pick open source. And by the way, I consider ARM, from my perspective, to be an open source too, because you can get the license to the architecture and you can really go back and design it and modify it and change it like Apple does today for all its cell phone, and it's proprietary to you. I don't see any reason why we couldn't get started like that. We have tremendous talent in India also, and we can create a very unique processor, unique to our needs, which have all the basic elements of whether it's an x86 or the RISC processors today or the ARM chip. In fact, all of them have very similar elements. They've all converged into, even though the names are different, similar kind of architectures. I think we could create that eventually ourselves. But I don't see any reason why we should wait. We should get started by building upon what we have. And the key is the timing and the speed with which we need to move.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Vinod. This has been a great visionary talk about from you. And on behalf of the ISA team, I would like to thank you for taking the time out and having this team vision mission shared with all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur.